Gentlemen, we're really grateful that you are with us tonight. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule, and especially with the holidays approaching. We know how busy each and every one of you are. Welcome to our follow-up community meeting on a new neighborhood that's being proposed called Oak Hill Apartments. It's located just down the street from San Quentin Village. My name is Mike McGuire, and I'm honored to work with you as state senator in Marin County. And I got to tell you, I'm absolutely thrilled to be co-hosting this evening's community meeting with our brand new Assembly member. We are so grateful that he's with us. You know him as Marin County Supervisor Damon Connolly. Within the next 12 hours, it's going to be official. He'll be our Assembly member representing Marin and Sonoma counties. We are really honored that Assemblymember-elect Damon Connolly is with us this evening. You're going to hear from him in just a few moments. He is co-hosting tonight. And the other co-host, we have the hardest working superintendent of all county school districts, and that's Mary Jane Burke. Superintendent Burke, thank you so much for joining us. And of course, we have Superintendent-elect John Carroll here as well this evening. Thank you so much, Superintendent-elect. It's wonderful to see you. Before we get into tonight's agenda, I want to do a quick overview, a quick rundown of what to expect. So first and foremost, this is our follow-up meeting. This is a second meeting that we've had. I'm sure we're going to be getting back together again, but it's our second meeting. And the Oak Hill Apartments would provide 115 units of affordable workforce homes for hardworking teachers and school support staff, and then another 135 units for dedicated essential workers. All of these units will be built on land owned by the state of California. Now, the idea for this development, it came from our neighbors in San Mateo and Santa Clara counties. They have built similar neighborhoods as is being proposed right here in Marin. And they've seen some positive benefits since these two developments were built in Santa Clara and San Mateo. So after building Educator housing in these two counties, the school district and the community college district realized positive outcomes. Teacher retention, it went up. Turnover, that rate went down. Student success in the classroom, it actually increased. And recruitment costs in Santa Clara Unified School District, in that school district, recruitment costs for teachers actually was reduced by $250,000 annually. And what we also know is that there are massive benefits of living where you work, not just for the individual in lifestyle, but also for our climate, getting more cars off the roads. And what we also know is 60% of Marin's workforce, approximately 60%, drive from out of county into Marin each and every day. So tonight, you're going to hear from a series of speakers. First and foremost, of course, we're going to hear from the Assembly member-elect. Then we're going to hear from County Superintendent of Schools, Mary Jane Burke. She's going to be with us this evening, focusing on the importance of this project for the greater Marin educator community. We're also going to be hearing from incoming County School Superintendent John Carroll. We also have the Department of General Services from the state of California with us tonight. His name is Jason Kinney. He's one of the best. They're the lead agency for the state of California on this project. The Department of General Services handles real estate transactions on behalf of the state of California. Mr. Kinney is going to talk to us about how we got here, and he's going to give us some specifics on the project and the process. And we're also going to be hearing from the nonprofit housing teams who will be building and managing these units in this new neighborhood. They're going to provide us a full briefing on the specifics of the development. They're also going to be talking to us about where they're at in the entitlement process. They're going to give us an update about where they're at in the environmental process. They're going to tell us what to expect in the weeks and months to come with the development. They're going to provide an update on the project timeline. And of course, they're going to be giving us an overview of steps that have been taken, the changes to this development since the last time we all got together. Now, once we have gotten through our all-star panel, the most important part of tonight will kick off, and that's hearing from each and every one of you. We're about 84 folks strong. We welcome each and every one of you, about 84 neighbors strong on tonight's community meeting. And based off of what we heard at our last meeting and what we've heard from many of you over the last few months, there are concerns about the development, concerns about potential increases in traffic, the density of the development. We've also heard concerns about the overall look of the development. So we're going to get into those issues and more tonight. We've received some great questions ahead of this evening's conversation. We'll be getting into those. And we also invite all of you who are joining us tonight to be able to send in your questions live. You can send them in right now to senator.mcguire@senate.ca.gov. Senator.mcguire@senate.ca.gov. But before we do anything else, I would like to be able to turn it over to our partner in all of this, and that is Assemblymember-elect Damon Connolly. I want to say, Assemblymember, we are so excited to continue our work together. You are truly one of the best. I'm grateful that you're with us tonight. And Assemblymember, take it away, and we welcome you, and congratulations on this exciting new role.
Thank you so much, Senator McGuire. Very excited as well to be getting sworn in Monday at noon if folks want to tune in. But I continue to enjoy being your supervisor right now for a few more days as well. And in that role, also just want to say good evening, everyone. Thank you again for joining tonight's town hall to talk about workforce housing in Marin, specifically the Oak Hill Apartments. For those of you joining for the first time tonight, this is an exciting project and a unique opportunity to provide affordable housing to our teachers, essential workers, and county workforce. I'm happy to share that this project is a true state-county partnership, as the senator mentioned. We're working with the Marin County Office of Education and the County of Marin to transform an 8.5-acre state-owned property near San Quentin. The lot would allow for 2 developments and a total of 250 affordable housing units. Our community, as we all know, deeply values high-quality education, and our teachers are the ones who make it possible. There are approximately 300 vacant positions right now in our school system countywide. Let's think about that for a minute, and we're going to hear more about that. A recent survey showed housing costs as a top reason for these recruitment and retention challenges. Many teachers simply cannot afford to live in Marin because of high costs of living, and some spend roughly half of their income on rent alone. Throughout the pandemic, our community demonstrated immense gratitude and support for our teachers. I see this project as another way we can recognize their contribution to our children and our community. This is an exciting opportunity to make it possible for our teachers to live and work right here in Marin. So about 75% or 101 units of the 135 units will be dedicated to local public school employees, and 25% or 34 units will be dedicated to eligible county employees. I'm happy to be here tonight, again, in strong support of this project. And I say that both as your county supervisor and also really as the incoming state assembly member, hoping to continue to be a partner in every sense of the word in moving this project forward with the community and with everyone you're going to be hearing from tonight. So at this time, it's my honor to kick us off with our first panel. And this is going to be a partnership, the topic rather is going to be a partnership with local educators, the need for educator workforce housing in Marin. And we're going to hear from 2 folks who need no introduction, but I'm going to go ahead and do that anyway. First is Mary Jane Burke, our current superintendent, who has served our students in Marin for 50 years, starting as an instructional assistant and most recently as our long time and frankly amazing superintendent of schools. She led our schools through the pandemic, working with public health leaders to put our kids' health and well-being first. I'm honored to have you here with us tonight, Mary Jane. After 7 terms in office, she chose not to seek re-election, which leads me to welcoming our next guest. It's my pleasure to introduce John Carroll. In June, John was elected to serve for his first term as Marin County Superintendent of Schools. John has served our community for 30 years in nearly every aspect of our Marin education system. Most recently as superintendent for the Lagunitas and Bolinas-Stinson School District. He's a teacher and an administrator. So it's my honor at this time to kick us off with Superintendent Mary Jane Burke, and then we'll hear from Superintendent-elect John Carroll.
Great, thanks so much, Damon. I want to start also to express thanks to those who have led this project, Senator McGuire, Assemblyman Mark Levine, before you, now you, Damon, and also Matthew Heimel at the County of Marin and his team. Like anything that's really important in a community, it takes a lot of partners who have a laser focus on doing what's best for the entire community. And so with great appreciation, I want to say we meaning John Carroll, your new superintendent, who's going to be amazing for sure as a leader of students and staff in our public schools, that we stand absolutely unequivocally in full support of this, both of us, in our presence here tonight. And I'm going to pass this now to John Carroll to give some background information on where we are with our staffing patterns currently. So John, I'll pass it to you.
Yeah, and maybe thanks, Mary Jane. Thanks for the kind introduction, Damon, as well. I can't stress the importance of workforce housing, especially educator housing. Over the last few years, what we've heard more from superintendents, school boards, and teachers and school employees themselves is how unaffordable it is to live in Marin County. At the beginning of this school year in Marin, we had 397 openings for school employees. That includes teachers, counselors, bus drivers, food service workers, paraprofessionals, everyone who makes schools work. So 300.
I think we may have, Superintendent-elect, we just lost your voice there. Let's see if we could start over.
Oh, how strange.
Oh, there you go. You're back.
Okay, I'm back. All right. Hopefully that'll keep going. I'm not sure where I left off.
You left just as you started getting into the statistics. So why don't you start that over? Yeah.
So we at the beginning of the year we were short 397 school employee positions, including teachers and all support staff. Things have not improved greatly. We still have 339 openings in schools in Marin for a variety of positions, and that's after efforts like I've never seen before. Shaking the bushes. People handing out cards at restaurants to workers or to other people sitting near them, job fairs, all kinds of recruitment efforts. But what we keep hearing is housing makes it very hard to be a teacher or a school employee in Marin. So there's a lot left unfilled. And this project we think is, I know I speak for Mary Jane as well, this is super important to us. And I think it will be a great first step in providing housing for our teachers that will make our schools stronger and that will serve our students better, which is our end goal. So.
Great. So let me add just a couple more remarks. Obviously, there's a need, and you can hear about that need. What we know, recently there was a survey by one of our partners, Marin Promise, that identified in our largest school district that 63%, so over half, indicated that given the housing crisis, they would not intend to stay with the district or be able to in the next 5 years. So imagine, largest school district, over half the employees identifying this critical issue. But of course, when we said, hey, what if we are able to provide some affordable housing, 87% said absolutely, we are in. So do know that since the last time we met, we do have some significant progress. The County of Marin and the Marin County Board of Education and Marin County Superintendent of Schools have actually signed memorandums of understanding that are going to help guide this project. What we do know, and you heard the information about what the numbers will be, there will be definitely opportunities countywide. So this is not for any particular district. This will essentially be a strategy that affects all of our school districts across Marin County. We'll be looking at obviously income levels as one of the factors. There will likely, because we know there'll be many people interested, there will likely be a lottery that will be necessary in order to identify who will be able to have access. And as you heard Superintendent Carroll say, this project will support not just teachers, but school employees, so others that work in our community. So just to note that we are so appreciative of the partnership, and our plan, by the way, is not that this is the first and last project, but this is the beginning of an overall strategy in our community to ensure that essential workers, whether they be teacher or others, have an opportunity to live in the community and provide support to all of us. This will make us stronger, more vibrant, and we look forward to it. So thank you so much. And Damon, back to you.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate the presentations. So we're going to talk a little bit now about how we got here, and specifically an overview of the executive order that was behind the state's workforce housing shortfall and the San Quentin site in particular. And we're going to be hearing from Jason Kenny, Deputy Director of the Real Estate Services Division of the California Department of General Services. Since 2018, Jason has served as the Chief Real Estate Officer for the state of California. He was appointed by Governor Jerry Brown and then reappointed by Governor Newsom in 2021. Mr. Kenny has been entrusted with taking the lead on implementing the governor's order to begin the redevelopment of excess state property into affordable housing. Jason, welcome.
Thank you, Assemblymember-elect. I am going to make my remarks brief, but a few points definitely worth emphasizing. In 2019, when Governor Newsom issued Executive Order N619, it was a very unique directive. It required my department and our partner department and the Department of Housing and Community Development to really take a fine-tooth comb to state property, looking for housing possibilities. We were looking for properties that were not being utilized to their fullest extent and that could be utilized for housing. We actually looked at 44,000 pieces of property statewide. Now, most state property, as you can imagine, is roads, mountains, beaches, lakes. And when you screen those out, the balance are property that is generally in use. Think state hospitals, motor vehicle field offices, highway patrol field offices, those sorts of things. But we definitely found sites that were not in use or had portions that were not in use. And this is obviously one of those. But beyond looking for sites in general, the executive order also directed us to actively redevelop the properties for affordable housing and do so in a way that not only maximize development where possible, but use the sites as demonstrations of what could be accomplished in the arena of housing. And there's a variety of ways you can use a site for demonstrative purposes. For example, you can demonstrate innovative construction approaches. We have a mass timber development, which is a new construction material. You could do sustainability focused. We have zero net carbon, zero net energy projects. You can be doing something that just hasn't been done in the area before. We actually have the largest affordable housing project in South Lake Tahoe history. It could be innovative local partnerships. We have, as Senator McGuire knows, the first land swap between the local government and the state for housing purposes. But here, it's in the populations we intend to serve. When we received development proposals for the site, we were not only thrilled with the quality of the team that we have today in Eden and Thompson Dorfman, but also with how they're using the site to serve and solve this critical need for the area. I think we can all wish it was always possible for people to work where they live and to live where they work, both for their own quality of life, but also for the environment's sake. But I think we also all have to recognize that that isn't always possible. And so it was really exciting for a team to propose serving teachers and government employees in the area for those reasons. Workforce housing is an important part of the overall statewide shortfall of affordable housing. Nearly every community in the state struggles with this, and addressing it is an integral part of solving the overall housing crisis, which we are keen to do our part in doing. And I have to say, we've been impressed with the receptivity of our local partners. Thanks, and represented by Supervisor, now Assemblymember-elect Damon Connolly. We love the support that we've experienced from our elected officials. Thanks again to Senator McGuire, and the diligent work and I think the conscientious work that Eden and Thompson-Dorfman have put into the project. And we're looking forward to their presentation this evening. Thank you.
That's Jason Kinney with the Department of General Services. Mr. Kinney, thank you so much. You were involved in so many different projects throughout Northern California and the state. We're really grateful. So ladies and gentlemen, we are now going to be turning it over to the two representatives from the two different nonprofit housing developers who are going to be with us. We're going to be providing a project overview, a timeline, and an update about where we're at. They're going to do a deep dive on the exact area where they're at right now with the entitlement process. They're going to be talking about the environmental process and where they're at on that. They're going to be discussing changes that they have been working on since the last time that we all got together. And of course, they're going to be doing a deep dive on what residents can see with the project in the weeks and months to come. So to be able to kick us off, we're so grateful that we have Joanna Julian with us here. Joanna is going to kick us off. She's a senior project manager for Education Housing Partners. And of course, Teddy Newmeyer. He is a director of real estate development for Eden Housing, the associate director of real estate development for Eden Housing. Joanna is going to kick us off, and then they're going to tag team on a PowerPoint and some visuals. So Joanna, take it away. And then we look forward to hearing from Teddy as well. How was your Thanksgiving, Joanna?
My Thanksgiving was amazing. Thank you so much. Yes, thank you, Senator and Assemblymember-elect. Thank you to each of our co-hosts tonight, and good evening to everyone joining us. So again, my name is Joanna Julian with Education Housing Partners, and on behalf of EHP and Eden Housing, we're really pleased to be here tonight. We're excited to provide an update on our Oak Hill Apartments workforce and affordable housing community. Since our last meeting, we've been hard at work progressing our design from the initial concept we presented last time into a schematic level design that incorporates comments we've heard from the community over the past year, and our updated design is reflected in the rendering that you see here. The project CEQA consultant has also been busy preparing the environmental impact report, and that report will be published in draft form for public review in the coming weeks. We'll talk about all of that in much more detail later on in the presentation. So with that, let's jump in. For background, Education Housing Partners is a California nonprofit public benefit corporation. It was established nearly 20 years ago by the principals of Thompson-Dorfman. Thompson-Dorfman's been based in Marin for 40 years. In that time, we've developed over 17,000 housing units throughout California. In the early 2000s, we created EHP, or Education Housing Partners, as a way to help public school districts and other public agencies to recruit and retain their employees in areas with high costs of living. To help address this issue, EHP works with the districts to create high quality housing on surplus land that can then be offered to employees at rents that are significantly below market. So this is the exact program we're talking about here tonight. We've now worked with over a dozen school districts in California, and shown here on this slide are some of those teacher and staff housing communities that we've built. With that, Teddy, I'll let you introduce Ian.
All right, thanks, Joanna. Good evening, everyone. I'm Teddy Newmeyer. I'm an Associate Director of Real Estate Development with Eden Housing, and I'm working on this project day to day. As many of you know, Eden Housing is a nonprofit affordable housing developer established over 54 years ago now. We're a mission-driven nonprofit serving low-income housing families, seniors, and people living with disabilities. We were established in 1968 in Hayward, and since then have developed over 170 properties in 15 counties and 50 cities, many in Marin. We have, I believe, 3 projects completed in Marin and another 3 or 4 that are in pre-development, 1 in construction. Eden's work goes beyond building high-quality buildings. We strive to create communities for residents through our affiliated property management company and resident services companies. And so we've got a few of our recent projects here as well. And then, so now get into the site itself. I think a lot of you are familiar with it and familiar with the project. Just a quick overview. Our site is right here along Sir Francis Drake between San Quentin and Larkspur. There's great access on this site, both to Larkspur Smart Train, Larkspur Ferry Terminal, Marin Country Mart, and then from there all across Marin. It's a great location, and we're excited about our residents kind of being able to commute to many jobs throughout the county, easy access to all sorts of amenities. And so, as I mentioned, access for many of our residents to their jobs around the county. And so, in the past, we've talked about kind of who are these actual residents who are going to be living between these at our projects. And so I think this chart does a nice job of showing who we're going to serve in these projects. As we'll dive into a little deeper, and we've talked about before, we actually have two separate projects. One being developed by Eden Housing, and that's going to serve residents between 30 and 60% of the area median income. And you can see a little bit of who those folks might be. And then the Educator housing component, which has been mentioned, is going to serve both teachers, educators, and school employees, as well as county employees, are served by these slightly higher but still very affordable incomes. This, of course, is by no means complete description of the folks who will live here, but I think it gives you a good idea of who might be living at this site. Again, some more info on the actual breakdown of the two properties, as was mentioned. Education Housing Partners is building their project, which will have 135 units. Eden's will have 115 units. These will be kind of split up between studios, 1 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms, and 3 bedrooms in pretty even proportions. And one thing to note, obviously this is along a busy street, and parking is very important. We do have a pretty substantial parking lot. It's going to be a 4-story parking structure with a parking ratio of over 1.4. So we think that will be sufficient parking for our residents and their visitors. And we are excited about that. We'll pass it back along to Joanna to talk more about the updated site plan.
Thanks, Teddy. So the bullets we've listed out on the project summary, I think we've covered at this point. So I'm going to jump right into the site plan. So this is our updated site plan. The Educator and County housing is in the lower building that's closest to Sir Francis Drake Boulevard. The lower income family housing is in the upper building. To orient everybody, so we have the main project entry on Sir Francis Drake Boulevard. The main driveway weaves up the middle of the site. On the far right-hand side, you'll see a perimeter fire lane for emergency vehicle access. The parking garage is located beneath the Educator housing building, and the garage will be shared by all residents of Oak Hill. Big picture, we've taken a lot of care, and you'll see this in the next slides where we look at renderings of the project, but our design team has taken a lot of care to work with the natural topography of the site. So we're stepping back in grade as we move through the site. The community, I mentioned the shared garage. We also have shared outdoor amenity spaces, including a community terrace, children's play area, a fenced dog run. Shown here on the right-hand side are some inspiration images for our outdoor spaces. Each building will also have additional indoor amenities such as fitness rooms, computer labs, and resident lounges. We're also proposing a traffic signal at the project entry that will assist cars to safely enter and exit the site with the benefit of a traffic signal. And we'll also have a crosswalk for both pedestrians and cyclists to be able to connect safely to the multi-use path that runs along the south side of Sir Francis Drake. A key change from the concept site plan that we presented last time, we've reconfigured the buildings to better accommodate the easement that's held by Central Marin Sewer Agency that runs up the vertically through the site. This also shifts the majority of the building mass further to the east, which gives much more of a setback to our neighbors to the west. Let's go ahead to the next slide. So here we're looking at an aerial rendering of the project. You can see that the site is a bowl shape. And so our architect, as I mentioned, has carefully designed the buildings to terrace up the site from a relatively flat base closest to the boulevard. And so working with the natural topography of the site while also preserving views of the ridgeline and surrounding open space. So we are taking care to preserve those view sheds. Closest to the street, you see we begin with a 3-story element, which then transitions into a 4 and then 5-story element as we step back in grade. The building colors will primarily be earth tones with a dark blue accent, which we think nicely complements the surrounding environment and also visually breaks up the buildings. Again, we've heard about concerns of the density, so we're doing what we can to design it in a way that really breaks it up visually. Lastly, we can see the proposed traffic signal. Teddy, if you just want to point it out with your cursor. So again, that's both for cars coming in and out, but also has a signalized crosswalk for pedestrians. Next slide. So here we're looking at the property more on the human scale. What we're looking at here is the meeting place of the 2 buildings with the lower income family housing on the left and the educator and county employee housing on the right. The lobby entries of each building are shown on either side of the garage, and above the garage podium, we have a courtyard shared by the whole community. The buildings range from 30 to 60 feet in height. So again, we're seeing those 3-story shorter elements marching up to 5 stories. And we're, as I mentioned, using building colors and different materials in a really attractive way to break up the appearance of the facade. And overall, we've designed the site, or I should say our design team. Let me take the opportunity to mention SVA Architects, an amazing architecture firm out of Oakland that we're working with, as well as our landscape architect, RHAA, based in Marin County. So they've done a great job designing a cohesive community with shared recreational spaces and places for active enjoyment, passive reflection, and we're really proud of the design that we've come up with. Next slide. So this last rendering, we see the property as seen from Sir Francis Drake Boulevard. We have our main entry on the right-hand side, again with traffic signal and the crosswalk. We see the 3-story section moving up to 5 up the hill. I'll say just for clarity that the driveway on the left-hand side is the sewer facilities entry. So we're maintaining the access for them as a key part of our project as well. Next slide. So CEQA, here's an overview of where we are with CEQA and where we started, which was in March of this year. Our consultant, First Carbon Solutions, released the notice of preparation. We then, they held a scoping meeting in April, during which time we collected a lot of comments that informed the topics that are ultimately being analyzed in our environmental impact report. That report is close to being finished in draft form. So that should be published either end of this year, early next year, and that will initiate a 45-day comment period. The website for our CEQA review is listed below. On the last slide, we also have more of a shorthand URL that'll be easier to remember and write down, which will also take you to the CEQA page. So again, we welcome anybody who would like to submit a comment. If you haven't already, we'll have this official 45-day comment period for the draft EIR. And after that time, we'll have the final EIR decision sometime in the spring. Next slide.
All right, thanks, Joanna. So to dive a little deeper into one CEQA related topic, and I know a topic that everyone has expressed a lot of interest in, and that's of course traffic. In our last town hall, there was a lot of discussion about traffic, and so we've partially for CEQA reasons and just partially because we understand kind of where this site is. Traffic's important. We've done an extensive traffic study. We worked with we hired an outside consultant, independent traffic consultant to do this full study. And this is kind of an analysis or a summary of everything they looked at conclusion. So the first thing, obviously, they analyzed the operations at nearby intersections, both kind of in the existing format that they are, and what would happen when we add traffic to this or add our project to the site. And what they concluded is that our project would add about 1,360 trips per day. That's 90 trips during kind of the AM peak hour and 110 trips during the PM peak hour, which really is the equivalent of about 1 to 2 cars per minute during those peak hours of the day. And based on that and additional studies or additional analysis, all 4 intersections that they analyzed would operate acceptably with the addition of project-related traffic. And so really they studied kind of the 4 biggest intersections on either side of the site and concluded that the project would not have a significant negative impact on those intersections. They also analyzed 4 project access alternatives. So they looked at having the project without a traffic signal, looked at having a traffic signal that was just for Oak Hill Apartments, and they looked at a shared traffic signal. So a shared traffic signal, and maybe to show this, I can go back to the site plan actually. A shared traffic signal here that was shared with Drake's Cove Road and those residents, and then a shared, I guess that would, in that instance, the traffic signal would be here and shared with Drake's Cove Road, and another where the traffic signal stayed here, and Drake's Cove Road would come, residents could come through our site to use that traffic signal. So they did an in-depth analysis of all those, and also concluded that all project access alternatives would have a less than significant impact, and that shared traffic signal with Drake's Cove Road would provide the lowest vehicle delay on Drake's Cove Road. They also did a vehicle miles traveled analysis, which looks at how far residents would have to travel at this new site, and also concluded that there would be a less than significant impact for that. Looked at the adequacy for facilities, pedestrians, bicyclists, and transit riders. And in that concluded that we should have some sort of signalized intersection for pedestrians to get across the street to the multi-mode path there. And as you can see, we have included that in our updated plans. And they have also looked at the adequacy of emergency access and determined that there is sufficient emergency access. We've gone over a lot of that emergency access in our plan with the Central Marin Fire Department, who are very supportive of what we're kind of our current plan. And so, this is just a quick overview. When our CEQA report or the draft CEQA EIR is published in the coming weeks, there will be a much more in-depth analysis that people can look at, and we're happy to answer questions about that now or when that report comes out. So to talk a little bit more about timeline, we talk a little bit about timeline in terms of CEQA, which is included here. Once that's complete, we have about a 6 to 9 month process in which we finish our drawings and go through the permitting process. Also during that period, we will continue our fundraising efforts, both for both projects. And at this point, I think it's good to say that we've certainly started those efforts, and we would like to thank the Marin Community Foundation, who have supported both projects already. And the County of Marin has also committed financial support to the project. So thanks to both of those entities for that support. But anyway, after permitting, about 20 to 30 months of construction and inspections, and then we hope to have the project up and running and filled with residents by the end of 2025. So that's the end of our slides for now. We want to just point everyone to our website, Oak Hill Marin, where we will have continual. First of all, we'll put these slides because I know we went through some of them rather quickly today. So these slides will be up there shortly. There's a place to join the interest list or submit comments. And then there's also a whole landing page that was referenced earlier, but you can find it from Oak Hill Marin for CEQA updates and all official CEQA releases. There's project FAQs and community forum information such as this. And if you have any questions, you can email us at oakhill@edenhousing.org. So that's all we have. Thank you all for participating. Thank you, Senator McGuire and Assemblymember-elect Connolly for hosting this. And just also want to thank the state and their staff, the staff of Jason Kinney and DGS's staff and the HCD staff for really being our partners as we push through this. So we'll send it back.
Thank you so much, Teddy. That's
questions.
Teddy Newmeyer, really grateful with Eden Housing. We're going to go back to full screen if we can, and really grateful for both Joanna and Teddy and their hard work that's gone into it. So, ladies and gentlemen, we're now at the most important part of this evening's meeting. That's hearing from each and every one of you. We've received several questions prior to tonight's community meeting, but we want to encourage you, those who are tuning in tonight, to be able to submit your questions now live. You can do so, senator.mcguire@senate.ca.gov. Email your questions right now, senator.mcguire@senate.ca.gov. And of course, Assemblymember Connolly and I will be reading those out here shortly. And the last thing I'm going to say before I turn it over to the Assemblymember is the Assemblymember and I are going to continue to be actively engaged on this process and on this project. You can reach out to either of us, and we are committed to continuing holding public meetings about this project as it moves forward through the development process. That's a commitment that Assemblymember Levine and I made, well over a year ago, and that's a commitment that Assemblymember-elect Damon Connolly and I are making to you tonight, that we're going to continue to see that through. So without further ado, let's turn it over to the newest Assemblymember in the state, that's Damon Connolly, to kick off our questions.
Yeah, let's jump right into questions. We'll have a few comments along the way from community members as well. So a question from Linda Howman: how will creating more workforce housing help with decreasing the environmental impact of vehicle miles traveled from outside of Marin County? How does this impact balance out with increased water usage at this site?
Sure. So the first part of the question, Senator mentioned earlier that about 60% of Marin's workforce currently commutes into the county each and every day. So I think that it cannot be overestimated how important it is for people to be able to live close to where their jobs are. This is important from an environmental standpoint when we talk about VMT, carbon emissions, also for Marin schools to be able to staff their schools and fill positions. So I think it's incredibly important from both the environmental and social standpoint. When we think about water, we're absolutely focused on water as being an issue to Marin, and the rest of California, but Marin particularly as well. So our project will have highly water efficient fixtures, appliances, drought tolerant landscaping, high efficiency landscaping irrigation. We also, since our last town hall meeting, and we heard about concerns about water in that meeting as well, we've begun discussions with Central Marin Sewer Agency to see if we can tap into the recycled water line that comes through our site to see if we could use that for irrigation. So we're exploring different options, very focused on water conservation. And I'll also just add that in terms of building housing, or building housing that's efficient for water use, multifamily is just the most efficient type of housing that there is. Apartments use much less water on average than single family homes. So this is a way to create more housing in Marin to house our workforce while also doing it in a water efficient way.
Move to a comment from Ann Gray. I live in Larkspur, Ann says, adjacent to this development site, and I'm highly in favor of this project moving forward. We need affordable housing for our community to thrive and attract highly engaged educators, care and public safety workers, and service providers. Thank you, Anne. This is a question and comment from Jean Severinghouse. She says, I'm so supportive of this purpose-built housing. Will there be any provision for senior housing? So many seniors can't afford to downsize and stay here near family and friends in Marin, and they vacate their larger family-sized houses for families. Please explore a swap to create land trusts out of seniors' houses when they sell, but link the swap to a small long-term housing guarantee so seniors can stay near families and friends. So maybe the question is, will there be a provision for senior housing as part of the project?
There's not a set aside for seniors in either components of these projects. Not that seniors wouldn't necessarily qualify for at least the Eden housing component. I think they definitely fit into many of the income brackets that we target with our housing, and obviously we're open to any and all residents, but there are no senior set asides in this specific project.
Okay. 2 questions from Linda Darby. At the first meeting, there was discussion about Larkspur becoming involved. What's the status? That is the city of Larkspur. And what's the timeline for the project?
We understand that the city of Larkspur and the county of Marin are talking about annexation. I'm afraid I don't have a update at the ready, but we're looking to the city and the county to really guide that process, and we understand that those conversations are being had.
Okay, great. And timeline?
Is that in terms of annexation or? My understanding is that it would likely happen closer to construction completion, but again, I don't know myself.
Okay, great. Senator McGuire.
Thank you so much, Assemblymember. Very grateful. All right, we want to remind you can email your questions or comments in even right now. We're taking them live, senator.mcguire@senate.ca.gov. We're taking your questions live here this evening. I want to first go to Susan. Susan writes in, I'm assuming there will be a huge number of eligible applicants, and I'm wondering how the part of Oak Hill that isn't in the joint powers is going to give a preference to local essential workers without running afoul of fair housing law. Let's go to Joanna and Teddy on the essential worker side, please.
I think that I'm trying to think about how we give a preference. The question is, how do we give a preference to essential workers or to locals without running afoul of fair housing? Is that right?
Correct.
And I think we have an in-depth tenant selection process, which is open to everyone and then goes through a lottery. In every county, some counties we can do local preference, and some counties you can, and so we're still looking into the process of if we can have a local preference. But we intend, or we hope to have a local preference. But if not, we will certainly, it's open to everyone, all local employees, as well as folks from out of the county who hope to move or work in the county.
I think it'd be fair to say, Teddy, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, and Teddy Newmeyer is in from Eden, is that there's a high likelihood that we may see individuals who are working in Marin County, but live outside of Marin County that would be eligible for this, because I think that's part of the goal, right? Is helping folks live where they work, but also Marin County residents would be eligible. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I want to see if that statement that I just said is accurate.
Thank you for that. That is an accurate statement that folks who, this is open to folks who live in Marin County, folks who work and folks who work in Marin County. And yeah, exactly. We are hoping to get folks who don't necessarily live in Marin County now, but do work there and have reasons to be there often. We're hoping to be able to house them in our housing.
Thank you so much. I want to go back to Superintendent Mary Jane Burke. Superintendent, this is an issue that you've been very focused in on. So the bottom line for you, Superintendent, is any classified or certificated employee who works at any school district in Marin would be eligible. And you're going to work on a very deliberative process on this, and you hope to have recommendations on that process in the coming months. But Superintendent, can you just fill us in on how that selection process for the educator housing will be run and managed by the Marin County Office of Education?
Sure. So our plan is to look to our partners who have already been through such situations where they're using a lottery system. What will be really important to us is that there's a fair way to have employees have access. So obviously what the cut points will be related to income, et cetera, will be critical. And the intent, so of course, this sort of speaks to my hope, which is this is the first of many projects, right? And so everything we'll be setting up will be hopefully the template for the future, but our intent is to ensure that countywide people have access, but there would be some sort of weighted system. So for example, Novato and San Rafael, large districts, right? So we want to make sure that as we look at the way the system is, that they would have more access, for example, than a small district, Nicasio, with very few staff. So that's the way we're thinking of it at a preliminary nature, but I'm certain that we'll come up with something that will be fair, equitable, and will ultimately ensure a template that we can use for this project and into the future.
Thank you so much. That's Mary Jane Burke, Superintendent of Marin County Schools. Superintendent, before I turn it back over to the Assembly member, I want to go to you for a second question. This is coming in from Robin. Robin writes in, given the high concentration of students of color and low-income students in 5 of the 17 districts across Marin County, how will the affordable educator housing at Oak Hill be leveraged to ensure that those students and their districts benefit from this essential resource for equity? I think it's important to note this is focused on school staff and employees, not students, but talk about that where Robin wrote in.
Sure. So a priority, of course, in our community has been and will continue to be to ensure that more of our staff, regardless of role, teachers, administrators, classified, are actually look like our kids. All the research says that when a single child is able to interact with a teacher that looks like them, that can make all the difference in terms of their trajectory. So that is a absolutely priority within the county. Having said that, I want to go back to the information we just heard. Over 300 vacancies. Currently, as we talk, we shouldn't even be talking on this call right now. We should be looking for people to cover these positions. But ultimately, just to note, of course, we will be doing everything we can to ensure equity, access, and people that look like our students. And on the other hand, we are definitely trying to ensure that we have people to fill the positions regardless of what they look like.
And Superintendent, you would say one of the biggest challenges, whether it's the Marin County Office of Education, San Rafael, or Southern Marin have, as far as attracting educators, is the lack of housing in Marin County. Is that accurate?
Absolutely. No question. No question about that.
And you have also surveyed superintendents on this, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. All right. That's Superintendent Mary Jane Burke. We're going to get back to Assemblymember-elect Damon Connolly now with additional questions and comments.
Thank you, Senator. We're going to next go to a comment and question from Joan Cox, City Council member-elect, I believe, from Sausalito. Joan says, thank you for participating in this forum. There are landowners in Sausalito also interested in including affordable housing in their development plans. What sources of state funding and tax credits are Eden Housing and Education Housing Partners relying on to make this project pencil out?
That's a great question. I can start. So we're currently planning on using the 4% low-income housing tax credit, as well as taxes and bonds for the Eden Housing component, as well as we have applied to various funds through HCD, so through the State Housing and Community Development, including multifamily housing program. We're looking at a few other programs through that through HCD as well, depending on how those applications go. So I think the question was about various state programs, but of course we're looking at Marin has also been supportive of the project, obviously in many ways, but financially, and then various foundations, including the Marin Community Foundation, have been supporting us financially as well.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, and for the
go ahead, Joanna.
Yeah, for the educator and county housing piece, I'll talk a little bit about the JPA. It's not state funding, but it's a key way that we're financing the project. So the educator and county units will ultimately be owned by a joint powers authority that's formed by the Marin County Office of Education and the County of Marin. And having the JPA in place opens up some avenues for tax exempt financing. So the JPA will issue tax exempt bonds that will fund the construction of the project. And ultimately those bonds will be repaid by property operations. In addition, we're also looking at other funding sources, whether state or local. The more favorable funding and grant funding that we can get helps us keep the rents low. So ultimately we're hoping to offer the most affordable rents we can to teachers and county employees. So we're exploring all options.
Great.
And I would just add, if it's all right, Assemblymember, is just, where Joanna is going, and Jason Kinney from Department of General Services, feel free to jump in on this. But look, over the next 48 to 36 months, there's going to be additional $6 billion available from the state of California in affordable housing funds. Those are dollars that are in the bank that have been allocated from this previous year's state surplus. And because this is a state project, there is a keen interest to be able to get this built. So we are deeply involved in this project. We're going to continue to follow this project. And I think that you will see if this is ultimately approved, that the state will invest in this project heavily to ensure that it's success. But again, ultimately, it's going to have to be approved. But Mr. Kinney from Department of General Services, again, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but one of the biggest investments that the state has made is several $1 billion, over $12 billion in homelessness and over $10 billion in affordable housing, 6 in the coming 3 years. Mr. Kinney, and I don't mean to interrupt Assembly.
No, this is great.
Please, but Jason Kinney.
Yeah, I think the track record of this administration, the legislature, in putting dollars to promises on housing, it speaks for itself. There is a tremendous amount of money, never enough, but a goodly amount that is ultimately going to be focused on housing. In addition to that, there are a few pots of funding that are specific to this program that are still competitive, but nonetheless are available for our developers. And then I think one of the biggest contributions of the executive order is the fact that we're not profiting a penny. This is a nominal long-term lease to the development partners that we're talking with here. And so the land value is essentially I don't use the word gift, but it's contributed ultimately to decreasing the project costs overall. And helping to spur that affordability level.
Yes, thank you, Jason. The gift, I mean, it's $1 per year in ground lease, so it's very nominal, and this is absolutely what makes the entire project possible.
Yeah, great information. Next question from Sherry McDonald. Sherry asks a question concerning added traffic congestion. Always a big concern, in this case on Sir Francis Drake from San Quentin Village to Highway 101. Will there be a new stoplight on Sir Francis Drake?
So yes, we do intend to put a new stoplight in. Our studies, what we're showing is that stoplight would not increase traffic significantly. I think that the idea is that you time that stoplight with the 2 or 3 other stoplights down the road, and so long as that timing works out well, which it's proven to do in many instances, it does not significantly increase the traffic there. And again, as the previous slide showed, the models show that this even at peak hours will add about 2 cars per minute to this road, which is, again, not significant.
Can I add to that just really fast? I think it's because we talk about traffic, and I know CEQA has come up, and the California Environmental Quality Act is probably a term that most people have heard of, but I would imagine most people haven't really gone through necessarily. And so I think it is important to note that the process that Teddy and Joanna are going through, it is an environmental impact report. It is the most involved and transparent of all the various types of analyses that one might do under CEQA. As Teddy mentioned, there is a third-party consultant. There are industry standards and best practices for calculating traffic impacts. It is a rigorous process. It is a fact-based evidentiary process. Everything's got some degree of subjectivity to it, but this is not, the developer making predictions. This is a third party doing an analysis. The government agency, my government agency, who's reviewing it, has an obligation to make sure it's done thoroughly and adequately. There are public comment periods as well. So the documentation will be available. Anyone can read it. Anyone can provide a comment on it. If you think there's something that was missed, in fact, you're invited to do so. And so this is something where it's not so much a trust us, it's laid out for folks. But I do want to reassure that there is both checks and balances, but also rigor behind the analyses since traffic is an ongoing concern.
Great. Maybe I'll do one more before turning it over, back over. This is from Kevin Haroff. Kevin says, I'm a resident of Greenbrae and a member of the Larkspur City Council. I believe this property is located within unincorporated Marin County, but is close to Larkspur and within the city's zone of influence. Some have suggested that the city might annex it. Who will be responsible for providing basic public services to future residents at the outset? And how might that change if the property is annexed? Who'd like to start that?
I can start that. It's a great question. As Steve mentioned, we understand these conversations are ongoing. In terms of city services, will be served by Water District, Central Marin Fire. So I have to say I'm not sure how it would change with annexation. But it's a conversation that's ongoing. And Teddy, do you have more to add there?
I don't have a ton more to add there. I think you said it pretty well. I think that most of these services and utilities would be the same whether we're in Marin or in Larkspur.
That's my understanding as well. Thanks, Teddy.
And then again, the overall discussions are ongoing with the city. Great. Senator?
Thank you so much. Very grateful. We're going to go to our next question. We're starting to get questions in pretty fast and furious. We want to remind you we have about 15 more minutes left, and want to remind you that you can email senator.mcguire@senate.ca.gov, senator.mcguire@senate.ca.gov, and we're going to be taking your questions this evening. Thank you so much for tuning in on this important topic. Fred writes in, and this is going to be for Joanna and Teddy. And Joanna, you're coming in a little quiet, so we're just going to get a little closer to the microphone if that's okay. Fred asks, what is the expected response time to the site from the Larkspur Fire Department station, Green Bay, or police in the afternoon when Sir Francis Drake is at a standstill? And I just want to point out, y'all, that there's a subdivision that's already been built right next to this new potential neighborhood as well. So just want to make sure folks know, I think it's 13 units, 12 homes. I forget the exact number, but there is a HOA next door that has already been built. But Joanna, Teddy, why don't we go to Fred's question about emergency response time?
Sure. I can't say what the exact emergency response time would be. However, we have met directly with Central Marin Fire, Chief Martin specifically, so he's very aware of our plans. They have not raised any major concerns. We've talked through in detail how we're going to address both fire access and fire protection within the site.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Joanna. And that is Joanna, who has just been doing a fantastic job on behalf of Education Partner Housing. I want to go to, and I apologize, I may mispronounce the name, Amarantha. She says that she is a little bit concerned that early childhood educators are not on the list. Can they be added as far as essential workers? I see that Superintendent Mary Jane Burke may want to chime in. Please, Superintendent.
Sure. So at this point, as you may know, that we do have teachers who teach young children from birth through preschool ages that work in our special ed departments countywide. I am a huge advocate for teachers of young children. And at this point, we are really looking at the sort of the traditional public school system. But I would agree unequivocally that as we look forward, there is not a more important sector in our community that needs to be addressed in terms of their ability to live in the community, be paid a fair wage, etc. So I look forward to the day when early childhood is included beyond those that are teaching young children with special education needs.
Thank you so much. That's the County Superintendent of Schools, Mary Jane Burke. We want to go to our next question. We're going to look to Joanna and Teddy on this. Jan writes in, she says, this is very exciting. The site plan shows green hills. Is this public open space? Will there be trails for residents to use? Where is the closest grocery store? Joanna, Teddy, why don't you talk about open space, yes or no? And then also, where is the closest grocery store?
Sure. So in terms of open space, the rest of the parcel beyond our project is actually state-owned land, and it's outside of our project area. So there are not trails to that area because it's not publicly accessible land. That being said, protecting views of the ridgeline, views of the open space is something that we've worked into our design. And our residents will be able to access Remillard Park, that's a park across the street on Sir Francis Drake. Teddy, could you speak to the grocery store?
Yeah, in terms of grocery store, I think there's a few grocery stores within about a mile. There's a Molly Stone's not too far away. There's a Trader Joe's, I believe, and then of course there's a Marin Country Mart, which I don't believe has a specific grocery store, but plenty of opportunities for food and other groceries right there, which is very much within walking distance of the site.
I'm going to thank you so much. That's Teddy and Joanna from the development teams. I'm going to turn it right back over to the Assemblymember-elect. I just want to say, Assemblymember-elect, we have another comment saying from Carol. Carol writes in saying that she thinks that a Larkspur council member should be involved in the planning for this development. I just being transparent, and please, Joanna, Teddy, push back on me. So what's been happening up until now is that there have been in-depth discussions between the county and the city on the potential annexation, number one. And then number two, because these are affordable, who potentially would get the credit for those units? Those are ongoing discussions as well. I know that Supervisor Rodoni has been involved in those discussions, and those are ongoing. And I hope we're not coming off as coy about not being able to answer directly about the annexation tonight and or about who would receive the credit for those affordable units. I just want to be completely honest with each of you tonight. Those conversations are ongoing. And since we're still early in on the development process, we'll have more to report at our next public meeting. But Joanna, Teddy, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but let me know if you think that is a fair assessment about where we're at on both those subjects.
I think that's fair. I would just add that, although maybe Larkspur City Council members don't have a specific responsibility on this project, we've been in touch with Larkspur Council and staff, as well as the county supervisors and many county staff on this project in terms of design and sharing design ideas, sharing all sorts of topics about the project. So and getting that feedback. So that's something that will continue to happen, whether or not they have an official responsibility at some point now or in the future.
That's great. Thank you so much. Assemblymember-elect, take it away.
Thanks. Comment from Janie Alsop. Janie says this is a great opportunity to provide homes in Marin that are affordable. I look forward to the conversation. Question from Leah Catching, and I believe Superintendent Burke addressed this. Will early childhood educators working in non-district sites be eligible to apply for this housing? Sounds like the expectation is yes on that. And next is a comment and question from Glenn Dennis.
Damon?
Go ahead, Mary Jane.
I want to clarify, at this point, early childhood educators that are not working in the public school system in special educations from 0, right, to preschool, those would be included, but not yet the overall early childhood community.
Okay.
And it's not because that doesn't need to happen at some point in the future in terms of the critical workforce at the critical time when the children's brains are developing at a rate they will never develop again. But for now, this is really related to the TK-12 system along with special ed. So we're not there yet, Leah, but that is our aspiration, definitely.
So good question, good clarification. Comment and question from Glenn Dennis. He wants to register his support for the project as well, and says, as a director of education at Santa Fe City Schools, we are creating an educator pathway. Affordable housing is an essential factor in ensuring a sustainable workforce for our schools. Would there be a certain number of units set aside for education workers? And again, I think that has been addressed, but if anyone wants to elaborate.
Yeah, I'll just
yeah, go ahead, Joanna.
That it's so of the 135 units that Education Housing Partners is building, 75% of those, or 101 units, are for educators, education staff.
Great. And then 2 questions from Miriam Martinez. What would be the requirements to qualify for affordable housing, and how long do you expect the waiting list to be?
That is a great question. The requirements are mostly income related at this point. So
set by law, right?
Yes, set by our funding sources, yeah. and actually by DGS based on the ground lease that we'll have with DGS and HCD. And so those will be, and we will have some of that. We'll have some of that info on our website. I think we do now, and we'll make sure we post that too in terms of what those current funding or current income requirements are for live-better housing. And in terms of how long the wait list will be, how it typically works is, when we're getting towards the end of construction, we will we'll advertise that we're opening our application pool, and we have a few week period in which everyone can apply. And then we do a lottery, and then to see who actually will get our units. And then there's a income verification process that happens after the lottery.
And finally, a comment from Jim Huggaboom. Jim is a superintendent of Santa Fe City Schools and says, I would just like to voice my support for this project and thank all those involved in making it happen. Senator?
Thank you so much, Assemblymember-elect. Very grateful. Teddy, I'm going to have you bring up, Cheryl is writing in about stoplights. I'm going to have you bring up the PowerPoint once again. Cheryl writes in wanting you to clarify if there's going to be 1 or 2 stoplights, and can you just provide where they'll be located? So Teddy will bring up our drawings here to be able to talk about stoplights. She's asking once again if there's going to be 1 or 2 stoplights. And if there are 2, if you could just show where they're going to be. If there's going to be 1, can you show where that one's going to be?
Can you see my screen?
Yeah, you're good. Yep.
So there will be 1 stoplight. And currently it's proposed as being here at the project entrance. However, we're also studying the opportunity of having it here at Drake's Cove Road. So, and that would be, we would put it there if we could connect to Drake's Cove Road. From our site. So there will be 1 stoplight, and we are exploring various opportunities to where that could go.
And Teddy, so just walk us through the decision-making process and where and why with the stoplight, and how are you going to make that final decision? So
ultimately, we have talked to the residents of Drake's Cove Road. And to the HOA briefly about it, and those conversations will continue once the traffic study is released with the CEQA documentation in a few weeks. But in order to connect to their road, we would need to coordinate with them, and they're considering that opportunity. And so if they're open to it, we would love to work with them to place a stoplight here, and we think that's an incredibly efficient place for the stoplight for everyone. But otherwise, the project works, and we could put it here if that's how we move forward.
All right. As long as we have the PowerPoint up, I want to go to Lydia's question. If you could go to the slide where it talks about income eligibility. Teddy is, of course, with Eden Housing. He is the Associate Director of Real Estate Development. Lydia, folks are coming in and out of the meeting. So Lydia writes in, is there a specific income required to be eligible? So Teddy or Joanna, why don't you walk us through how that works and who's eligible? One more time, please.
So it's going to be different for, let me speak to the Eden housing portion, which is going to target residents at about 30% of area median income to 60% of area median income. And so in this range, and we're going to have studios up to 3 bedrooms. So actually, this chart isn't full. You could have more than 4 people living there, but the idea is, some units are going to be set aside for residents making 30% of the area median income. And so if you're a two-person family, then you could qualify for one of those units if you make $44,000.
And Teddy, is that a maximum?
Yeah, that's a maximum. And we can go into these become fairly complicated equations when you get into it, but I think that kind of explains how our portion, how you qualify for our component. Maybe Joanna can talk about.
That's great. And Joanna is Point for Education Housing Partners. She's a senior project manager. Joanna, just do a little bit of a deep dive, if you don't mind, income eligibility for educators to be able to get a home here at the Oak Hill Apartments.
Sure. So we are targeting that our rents would be affordable to households earning between 60% to 120% of AMI. But as I mentioned, we are trying to keep our rents as affordable as possible. So we're actually hoping that the majority of our units will be affordable in the 60 to 80% range. So the income requirements will just be not exceeding the maximum incomes to be eligible for those units.
Thank you so much, Joanna. Very grateful. We're going to go back to full screen. We're winding down our community meeting. And of course, Assemblymember Connolly and I will be back with you here in 2023 to be able to do an update on this development, making sure that the community is heard every step of the way. We hear the feedback here tonight in regards to traffic. We hear the feedback in regards to making sure that Larkspur is at the table, which they are, but how potentially they can be further involved in this conversation. So that's something that we're going to be taking back as well. We'll have updates on the environmental process as that makes its way through. I want to go to one final question. This just came in from Jean. Jean wants to know what the cost of the parking is with 300 plus spaces. She wants the development team to consider unbundling the parking spaces from the rental units and or looking at a moderate fee for parking and reducing the cost of the rental housing. I will go to Joanna and Teddy for comments on that from Jean.
Sure. So I'll start on our piece. We generally unbundle parking, and for anyone who's not familiar with that term, it essentially means that parking is not for free included in your rent, but it's a separate charge. So if you need the parking, great. If you don't, then you're not paying for it in your rent. So we have not set the cost of parking, but we plan to unbundle it. Teddy, I believe it's a different process for your project.
Yeah, that's correct. In the affordable housing for big world, based on our funding sources, we can't unbundle the parking. In order to basically capitalize the cost of the parking, it has to be included in the rent that we charge. So I can't right now give you the exact or the cost of that parking structure. We're doing everything we can to design a parking structure that's efficient and therefore more cost efficient to build. But we unfortunately, we don't have the ability to unbundle it from rent and therefore potentially charge lower rents.
Thank you so much. That's Teddy Newmeyer from Eden Housing, and of course, Joanna Julian from Education Housing. I'm going to turn it over quickly to the Assembly member and to the superintendent for closing comments. But before I do, I'd like to be able to go to Joanna and Teddy. Joanna, how do folks keep in touch with you here in the coming weeks and months if they want to provide feedback, if they want updates? Joanna, how do they keep in touch with you at Education Housing Partners?
The best way for this project is really oakhillmarin.com. So both Teddy and I are reviewing all comments that are submitted to that site. We have all of our project information there. So that's really the best way.
Teddy, you are meeting with individuals one-on-one as well. So again, going to the website is the most important, but I think there's been a commitment between yourself and Joanna to be able to make personal contact and everyone who emails in. But Teddy, I don't want to give you a statement that you don't agree with.
No, that's fine. I think that we've got a project-specific email address, oakhill@edenhousing.org. My personal email is teddy.newmeyer. It's spelled right there at edenhousing.org. Feel free to reach out. We're happy to talk to anyone with interest in this project who has more questions, needs more clarification on anything we've talked about. Also, you can sign up for our interest list, whether you're interested in just learning more about the project or interested in being a potential resident one day. At oakhillmarin.com, there is a place for you to sign up. And if you sign up, we'll make sure that you get on various email blasts. We'll make sure that you see CEQA information when it's released and that kind of thing.
And one more time, Teddy, you think the CEQA document will be released approximately when?
We're hoping by the end of the year, but it might not be until January.
Okay, but sometime in late December or the month of January, folks should see that environmental document, that draft environmental document released.
That's correct.
All right. Thank you so much. That's Joanna Julian from Education Housing Partners, and of course, Teddy Newmeyer from Eden Housing. I want to turn it over to our superintendent of schools, Mary Jane Burke, for closing comments, please.
Sure. So I just want to say to our entire community, there's nothing more important than addressing this issue. I've been, as you've heard earlier, 50 years in this profession. I have never seen such a challenging time to get in front of our kids, the most talented, highly effective educators. And we know that there's nothing more important than an amazing teacher. And so please note that this will be the trajectory that will change lives of so many children and families. So we should do everything we can, not just with this project, but for all projects that come forward. And Senator McGuire, I just want to take this moment to say that your unequivocal, strong, courageous leadership with a laser focus on ensuring that what we do will ensure positivity for our community now and into the future has inspired me to be a better leader. So thank you.
Just got to say, and I think I can speak for all of us, we love Mary Jane Burke, truly, and you have done so much good in your life, and we are so lucky and blessed that you've chosen Marin County to commit yourself. And I'm not sure what we're going to do without you. We're really excited to be working with John Carroll, and he is truly one of the best. But I got to tell you, Superintendent, we love you. And we're going to miss you dearly, and that is absolutely sincere. And I'm going to start getting blubbery. But before I do, I'm going to turn it over to Assemblymember-elect Damon Connolly to be able to provide closing comments.
Couldn't agree more with those sentiments. We're going to miss you, Mary Jane, but hope to continue to work together. And Senator, really appreciate just the opportunity to participate tonight. I think it's very evident the community is very interested in this project, and not surprisingly with our community members asking the right questions. I think this session hopefully was very informative and helpful. I know it followed a prior session as well. And as you noted and our speakers did, we have an ongoing CEQA process right now that will answer a lot of these key questions and provide a continuing forum for people to express issues they have and thoughts on the project. There are ongoing discussions right now with the city of Larkspur. We appreciate them as a valuable partner. Other stakeholders around the provision of services as well. And above all, we have the right partners at the table. We were reminded of that again tonight with the development team and our education community as well. Above all, this is going to be a community-centered process. And we look forward to continuing in that vein because Superintendent Burke put it well. There is a need and an opportunity with this project. And that's why I'm in full support and look forward to continuing to work with everyone in this new role that I'll be assuming next Monday. Thank you.
Assemblymember, thank you so much. We are so grateful. We are so grateful that you are on board in this new role and continuing your leadership here in Marin and throughout the North Bay. We are so thrilled to be working with you, Assemblymember. That's Assemblymember-elect Damon Connolly. Just a few housekeeping notes. Number one, Assemblymember-elect Damon Connolly and I are going to continue to work with you each and every step of the way. You can take this to the bank. We will continue to have community meetings on this critical project here in the weeks and months to come, both publicly as well as individual meetings with neighbors. We both have done that, and we look forward to doing more here in the future. And you will see additional formal community meetings on this project in 2023. I also want to say thank you to Assemblymember Mark Levine, who kicked off this process with us, who has been committed to this process. We want to say thank you to Assemblymember Levine for his leadership on this. We also want to say thank you to the Homeowners Association who live directly next door to this project. They have been active and engaged, and you have our commitment that we're going to continue to work with you here in the weeks and months to come. And of course, the County of Marin and the City of Larkspur, you have our commitment that we're going to continue to partner with you. I'm going to end it right here with this. One of the biggest crises that we have in this state and right here at home is the lack of workforce affordable housing. Full stop. And that is why you're seeing us work for this project. We desperately need more housing for teachers, for our classified staff, and for essential workers in Marin County and throughout the Bay Area. And this is just the start of it. You're going to see additional projects moving forward in Marin and throughout the North Bay, but we're not going to sacrifice community input. We're going to do it right, not fast, and you're going to be with us every step of the way. On behalf of Assemblymember-elect Damon Connolly and Superintendent of Schools Mary Jane Burke, and of course to Superintendent-elect John Carroll, we wish you a Merry Christmas, a Happy Hanukkah, and a wonderful holiday season. You'll be receiving email updates from the development team here in the weeks to come. And of course, both the Assemblymember and I will be emailing you for what we hope is an in-person meeting next time as we get together with neighbors in 2023. Thank you so much for joining us. We hope you have a wonderful holiday season. Good night, everyone.